Darius King tore his janitor ex-wife's dress in front of 300 guests at his mother's wedding. While his mistress and family laughed and pointed at her pregnant belly like she was trash, they'd finally thrown out. His mistress Alana whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, "That's the ghetto girl who tried to trap him?" His mother Claudette sneered, "I told you she didn't belong in our world." But when that torn dress released a folded letter that fell onto the marble floor, when a retired federal judge picked it up and read the government letterhead out loud, when Nia Brooks looked her ex-husband dead in the eyes and said the words multi-billion-dollar contract, Darius King's face went white as death. What this janitor revealed next about the government contract she'd signed just 3 days earlier, what she told him about who she really was and what she'd been building while he was busy destroying her, dropped this man to his knees, begging in front of every investor, politician, and society family he'd been trying to impress. But here's what nobody in that ballroom understood yet. How does a pregnant janitor who can't afford groceries sign a $2.3 billion government contract? What had Nia Brooks been before Darius convinced her she was nothing? And why would a man publicly destroy the one woman who could have saved him from the secret bankruptcy that was about to obliterate everything he'd built? Hello, friends. Welcome to our story. Before we start, please like this video and subscribe. Also, tell us in the comments where you are watching from. New York, Atlanta, maybe London or Toronto? We want to know. Let me take you back 4 days before that dress got torn. 4 days before Darius King's world collapsed in front of everyone who mattered. Nia Brooks was sitting on the floor of her studio apartment at 2 in the morning with her hand on her pregnant belly and 3 eggs in her refrigerator. That was it. 3 eggs, half a gallon of milk, some butter that was going bad. The rent was due in 6 days, and she was $970 short. The electric company had sent a shut-off notice, stamped in red ink. Her phone was 1 day away from being disconnected. And her baby, her little girl growing inside her, was kicking like she was already fighting for survival in a world that didn't want either of them. Nia was 27 years old, but she felt 100. She felt like she'd lived 1,000 lifetimes in the 7 months since Darius King had looked at her positive pregnancy test and said the words that killed something inside her she didn't even know could die. "Your hood baggage, Nia. You'll drag me down. This baby will ruin everything I've worked for. Get rid of it or get out." He'd offered her money for an abortion like he was paying for car repairs. When she refused, when she said she was keeping their baby, he walked out of their apartment and filed for divorce the next day. He changed his phone number. He moved to a luxury loft downtown. He erased her from his life like she'd never existed. Like 4 years of marriage meant nothing. Like the 3 years she'd worked 2 jobs so he could build his tech company from their tiny kitchen table. Never happened. Nia stared at the bills spread across her coffee table and felt something break inside her chest. Not her heart that was already broken. This was something deeper. This was the feeling of a woman who'd given everything and had nothing left to give. She'd worked as a cashier at a grocery store until they cut her hours because nobody wants a pregnant woman who needs bathroom breaks and can't lift heavy boxes. She'd applied for 63 jobs in 2 months. 63. Every single one rejected her the moment they saw her belly. She'd sold everything she owned that had any value. Her laptop, her jewelry, her winter coat, just to pay last month's rent. Now she was eating 1 meal a day, rationing eggs like they were gold, trying to keep her baby alive inside a body that was slowly starving. Her phone buzzed on the couch beside her, and Nia almost didn't answer because it was probably another bill collector or another rejection email. But something made her pick it up. The number was local but unfamiliar. Her thumb hovered over the decline button. Then she answered. "Hello?" Her voice came out scratchy and tired. "Hello? Is this Nia Brooks?" A woman's voice, professional and polished. The kind of voice that belonged to someone who'd never missed a meal or worried about electricity being shut off. "Yes, this is Nia." Hi Nia, my name is Jennifer, calling from Elite Event Staffing. We got your name from the temp agency you're registered with. Are you currently available for work? Nia's heart jumped so hard she felt it in her throat. Yes, I am. What kind of work? We have a high-end event this Saturday evening at the Grand Marquis Hotel downtown. It's a wedding reception for a very prominent client. We need servers and ushers to help with guest services. The pay is $500 for the evening, plus tips, cash payment at the end of the night. Would you be interested? $500. Nia closed her eyes and felt tears burn behind her eyelids. $500 was half her rent. $500 was food for 2 weeks. $500 was keeping the lights on for another month. Yes, she said, and her voice cracked. Yes, I'm very interested. Jennifer went through the details. Black tie event, all black clothing, strict professional standards, arrive by 4:30 for orientation. Nia wrote everything down on the back of an overdue electric bill because she didn't have clean paper. When the call ended, she sat there staring at her phone like it might disappear, like this might be a dream she'd wake up from. Then the email came through with the event details, and Nia's entire world stopped. She clicked on the attachment, saw the logo at the top in elegant gold script, the King Pierce wedding. Her hand started shaking so badly, she almost dropped the phone. She scrolled down, and there he was, filling her screen, looking exactly like the man who destroyed her, except more polished, more successful, more everything she could never be. Darius King in a custom tuxedo with his arm around a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. The woman had long, flowing hair and perfect skin and a smile that cost thousands of dollars in dental work. The caption read, "Celebrating the union of Darius King, CEO of King Financial Technologies, and Alana Pierce, lifestyle influencer and entrepreneur." Nia scrolled through the entire document with tears streaming down her face. There were photos of Darius at charity galas and business award ceremonies. There were photos of him and Alana at red carpet events, looking like they owned the world. And then Nia saw the wedding details. 300 guests, live band, 7-course dinner, ice sculptures, a dress code that probably cost more than Nia's entire year of living expenses. Her ex-husband, the man who'd told her to get rid of their baby, was having a wedding that cost more than most people made in 5 years. And somehow, impossibly, she'd been hired to serve drinks at it. This wasn't a coincidence. Nia knew that, with the kind of certainty that settles in your bones. Darius had done this on purpose. He'd found out where she was registered for temp work. He'd requested her specifically. He'd arranged for her to be called, to be offered just enough money that she'd be desperate enough to accept. He wanted her there. He wanted her to see his perfect life with his perfect new woman. He wanted her to serve him champagne while she was pregnant and broke and struggling. He wanted to humiliate her one more time, to prove once and for all that he'd won and she'd lost, that he'd moved on to better things while she was stuck cleaning up the wreckage of the life they'd built together. Nia sat there on her couch, staring at Darius's face on her phone screen, and something cold moved through her chest. She should refuse. She should call Jennifer back right now and quit. She should protect herself and her dignity and her baby from whatever cruel game Darius was playing. But then she looked around her apartment, at the bills on the table, at the eviction notice she'd hidden under a magazine because looking at it made her want to die, at the refrigerator that held 3 eggs and nothing else. $500. That was the price of her pride. And right now, with a baby growing inside her and electricity about to be shut off and no food in the kitchen, pride felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Her baby kicked hard against her ribs, like she was already trying to tell her mama something. Nia placed both hands on her belly and made a decision that would change everything. She would go to that wedding. She would put on her old black dress and her scuffed shoes, and she would hold her head up as high as she could manage. She would take Darius King's money and she would survive one more month. And maybe if there was any justice in this world, maybe someday karma would find him. But what Nia didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, as she sat there in her tiny apartment making peace with her own humiliation, was that karma had already found her. 3 days earlier, on a Tuesday morning that felt like every other morning in her life of quiet desperation, Nia had received a phone call that changed everything. She'd been standing in the federal building downtown, where she worked night shifts, cleaning offices, and her phone had rung with a DC area code. She'd almost ignored it because she was tired and her back hurt and she didn't have energy for bill collectors. But something made her answer. "Miss Brooks, this is Director Patricia Chen from the United States Department of Education, Office of Federal Contracts. Is this a good time to talk?" Nia had gripped the handle of her cleaning cart and said yes, even though her heart was beating so hard she could barely breathe. "Miss Brooks, I'm calling to inform you that your proposal for the National School Infrastructure Modernization Initiative has been selected. Congratulations! You've been awarded the primary contract." Nia had stood there in that empty hallway with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and cleaning supplies rattling on her cart, and she'd said, "What?" Director Chen had laughed, a warm sound that felt like sunlight. "Your proposal, Miss Brooks. Your company, Brooks Solutions. You bid on retrofitting aging public school buildings with green technology and modern safety systems across 47 states. Your proposal was the most innovative and cost-effective we received. The contract is valued at $2.3 billion over 5 years. You won $2.3 billion. Nia had said the number out loud, standing in that empty hallway, and it didn't sound real. It sounded like words from a movie, like something that happened to other people. People who weren't 6 months pregnant and cleaning toilets at 2 in the morning to survive. But Director Chen kept talking, kept explaining contract terms and payment schedules and federal oversight requirements, and slowly, impossibly, Nia started to understand that this was real. This was actually happening. The proposal she'd been working on for 18 months, the one she'd written in the middle of the night after her janitorial shifts, the one she'd built using her father's research on sustainable building systems, and her own master's degree in environmental engineering that Darius never knew she'd finished, that proposal had won. She'd beaten out major firms with hundreds of employees and unlimited resources. She'd won because her design was better, smarter, cheaper, and more effective than anything the big companies had submitted. Director Chen had walked her through next steps. Paperwork, legal review, formal contract signing scheduled for Friday morning. Federal background check already cleared. Initial payment of $400 million would be dispersed within 30 days of signing. Nia had written everything down on the back of a cleaning checklist with a pen she'd found in a trash can, her hand shaking so badly her handwriting looked like a child's. When the call ended, she'd stood there for 20 minutes, just breathing, just trying to make her brain accept what her ears had heard. Then she'd gone back to cleaning toilets because the contract wasn't signed yet and the money wasn't real yet, and she still had rent due in 6 days. She'd told no one. Not her friend Tasha, not her mother who was battling cancer in another state. No one. Because telling people made it real, and if it somehow fell through, if this was a mistake or a dream or a cruel joke the universe was playing, she didn't think she could survive the disappointment. So she'd gone to the federal building on Friday morning and signed the contract with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. She'd watched federal officials stamp and file and process the paperwork. She'd received a letter on official government letterhead confirming the contract award. And then she'd folded that letter carefully and tucked it into her bag and gone back to her apartment and sat on her couch staring at nothing, because she didn't know how to be a person who had just signed a $2.3 billion contract. The money wouldn't hit her account for 30 days. 30 days! She still had to survive 30 days with 3 eggs in her refrigerator and rent due in 6 days. and electricity about to be shut off. That's why when Jennifer called offering $500 to work a wedding, Nia had said yes without hesitation, because the contract didn't feel real yet, because the money was still just numbers on paper, because she was still a pregnant woman with empty pockets and an eviction notice and a baby who needed to eat. And because some part of her, some tired, broken part that hadn't healed from what Darius did to her, wanted to see him one more time. Wanted to stand in his presence one more time before her life changed forever. Wanted to look him in the eyes and know that she'd survived him. That she'd built something he could never touch. That she'd won even though he'd tried so hard to destroy her. So on Saturday evening, Nia put on her old black dress that barely fit over her pregnant belly, and her scuffed black shoes that she'd polished until they looked almost presentable. She stood in front of her bathroom mirror and pulled her hair back into a neat bun. She looked at herself. Really looked, and saw a woman who'd been beaten down by life and love and betrayal, but who was still standing, still breathing, still fighting. Her baby kicked, and Nia placed her hand on her belly. "We're going to be okay, little girl," she whispered. "After tonight, everything changes, I promise." She arrived at the Grand Marquis Hotel at 4:30 exactly. The building was massive, all marble columns and crystal chandeliers, and the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself because everyone could see it. Nia checked in with the event coordinator, a thin white woman with a clipboard and an expression that said she'd rather be anywhere else. The woman looked at Nia's pregnant belly with barely concealed disgust, but didn't say anything, just handed her a name tag and pointed toward the service entrance. "You'll be working the main ballroom. Champagne service during cocktail hour. Then dinner service. Stay professional, stay invisible, and don't talk to the guests unless they speak to you first. Understood?" Nia nodded. She followed a group of other servers through the back hallways of the hotel, through the parts guests never see, the concrete floors and industrial lighting, and the smell of kitchen grease. They entered the ballroom through a service door, and Nia's breath caught. The room was enormous, decorated like something from a fairy tale, with white roses and gold accents, and tables set with china that probably cost more than her monthly rent. A live band was setting up on a stage at the far end. Ice sculptures, shaped like swans, were melting slowly under soft lighting. 300 chairs, upholstered in cream silk, surrounded tables with centerpieces that must have cost thousands of dollars. And at the front of the room, on a raised platform, there was a wedding arch covered in more flowers than Nia had ever seen in one place. This wasn't just a wedding. This was a display of wealth and power. This was Darius King showing everyone who mattered that he'd made it, that he belonged in this world of old money and new influence. Nia picked up a tray of champagne glasses and took her position near the entrance where guests would arrive. Her hands were steady, even though her heart was racing. Other servers moved around her with practiced efficiency. Someone turned on the sound system, and soft classical music filled the space. And then the guests started arriving. They came in waves, these people who lived in a different world than Nia, women in designer gowns that cost more than cars. Men in custom tuxedos with watches that could feed a family for a year. They laughed and air-kissed and talked about vacation homes and stock portfolios and charity galas. They took champagne from Nia's tray without looking at her face, without seeing her at all, because to them, she was part of the furniture, part of the hired help that made their lives comfortable. Nia watched them and felt nothing. No envy, no anger, just a strange, detached observation, like watching fish in an aquarium. These people had money, but they didn't have what she had. They didn't have her father's brilliance living on through her work. They didn't have a $2.3 billion contract that would change infrastructure for millions of children. They didn't have her baby girl kicking inside them, fighting to be born into a world that her mama was about to transform. An hour into the cocktail reception, Nia saw him. Darius King walked into the ballroom like he owned it, which in a way he did, since his mother was paying for everything. He looked exactly like his photos. Tall and handsome, in a perfectly tailored tuxedo with a gold Rolex catching the light when he moved. His beard was trimmed just right. His shoes were shined to a mirror finish. He was laughing at something, his head thrown back, his whole body relaxed in the way of men who believe the world belongs to them. And on his arm was Alana Pierce. She was even more beautiful in person, wearing a gold dress that probably cost $20,000 and heels so high, Nia's feet hurt just looking at them. Her hair fell in perfect waves down her back. Her makeup was flawless. She had the kind of beauty that came from expensive procedures and personal trainers and never having to worry about grocery money. She laughed at everything Darius said, her hand possessive on his arm, marking her territory for everyone to see. Darius was circulating through the room, shaking hands with men in expensive suits, kissing the cheeks of women dripping in diamonds. He was performing, Nia realized. Every gesture calculated, every smile strategic. He was working this room like it was a business meeting because, for him, it was. These weren't friends and family. These were investors and connections and people who could save his failing company if he played his cards right. Nia stayed on the opposite side of the room with her champagne tray, watching from a distance. She saw Darius's mother, Claudette King, holding court near the wedding arch, a tall, elegant woman in her 50s wearing purple and enough jewelry to open a store. She was talking to a distinguished older white man who had to be Bernard Pierce, her soon-to-be fourth husband. Bernard looked like money, the kind of old wealth that came from generations of family business and real estate empires. Claudette was laughing too loud at his jokes, touching his arm too often, performing her own version of the same game her son was playing. This whole wedding was a transaction, Nia realized. Claudette was marrying Bernard for his money and status. Darius was dating Alana to access her father's investment capital. Nobody here was operating from love. This was business wrapped in roses and champagne. Then Darius turned and his eyes swept across the room and landed directly on Nia. She watched his face change, watched his smile freeze and crack, watched his eyes go wide and then narrow as his brain processed what he was seeing. His pregnant ex-wife, here, in his mother's wedding, serving drinks like the help. For one moment, one brief flash, Nia saw something that might have been guilt or shame cross his features. But then it was gone, replaced by something cold and calculated. He leaned down and whispered something to Alana. Alana's head whipped around and her eyes found Nia. Her perfect face twisted into something ugly. She whispered back to Darius, her lips barely moving, her smile never faltering, for the benefit of everyone watching them. Darius started walking toward Nia, and the entire ballroom seemed to tilt. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, could only watch him cut through the crowd with Alana and his mother following behind him like a pack closing in on prey. The other guests sensed something happening. Conversations died, heads turned, phones came out. Darius stopped 3 feet from Nia, and his face was a mask of cold fury. "What are you doing here?" His voice was low but carrying, meant for the audience gathering around them. "I'm working," Nia said quietly. Her champagne tray trembled in her hands. "I needed the money." Claudette pushed forward, her face twisted with disgust. "Is that the girl? Is that the one who tried to trap you?" Her voice was loud, deliberate, designed to humiliate. "I told you she didn't belong in our world." Alana grabbed Darius's arm possessively. "I thought you said she was gone." "Make her gone." The crowd was circling now. 50 people, then 100, phones recording everything. Nia tried to step back, but Darius moved with her. "You don't belong here," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You never did." He reached for her arm. Nia pulled away, and her uniform caught on his cufflink. Instead of letting go, instead of just letting her leave with whatever dignity she had left, Darius yanked hard. The fabric tore from shoulder to waist with a sound like a scream. Nia stood there, exposed, her pregnant belly visible in the tank top underneath, her torn uniform hanging from her body in shreds. 300 people went completely silent. Cameras flashed. Someone gasped. And then something fell from Nia's waistband where she'd tucked it because she had no purse, no bag, nowhere else to keep the most important piece of paper she'd ever received. The letter hit the marble floor with a soft flutter. An older black woman in an elegant navy suit stepped forward from the crowd. She was maybe 60, with silver hair and the kind of presence that made people move aside without being asked. She bent down and picked up the letter. Read the letterhead. Her face changed completely. "This is a federal contract authorization letter," she said in a clear voice that cut through the silence like a blade. "I know because I used to review these as a federal judge." She looked at Nia with something like recognition, like respect. "What project?" Every eye in the ballroom turned to Nia. She stood there with her dress torn, her belly exposed, her baby kicking hard against her ribs like she was already fighting alongside her mama. And Nia Brooks, who'd spent 7 months being invisible, being nothing, being the woman Darius King had thrown away like garbage, lifted her chin and spoke. School infrastructure. 47 states. $2.3 billion. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Bernard Pierce, the man Darius had been trying to impress all night, the man whose money was supposed to save Darius's failing company, stepped forward and took the letter from the judge. He read it carefully. His face went pale. "This is real," he said slowly. "This is a GS 15 level authorization. This is." He looked at Darius like he was seeing him for the first time. "Your ex-wife is about to be worth more than everyone in this room combined." Darius staggered backwards. "That's not possible." "You're a janitor?" His voice cracked on the last word. Nia looked at him and felt nothing but a strange, distant pity. "I'm an environmental engineer with a master's degree from Howard University who cleaned toilets at night so I could eat," she said. "You never asked what I did during the day while you were building your company. You never asked what I was working on. You never cared. You just decided I was hood baggage and walked away." Claudette made a choking sound. Alana actually stepped away from Darius, moving closer to her father, the alliance breaking in real time. The crowd was pressing closer now, phones out, recording every second of Darius King's destruction. "Wait," Darius said, and his voice was desperate now, all the polish gone. "Nia, wait, we can fix this." "We're still married." "That means legally, actually," Nia interrupted, and her voice was steady and strong and carrying to every corner of that ballroom. "You're not my husband. I filed for divorce 7 months ago when you left. You were supposed to be served, but you moved and changed your number, remember? The divorce was finalized 3 weeks ago in absentia. I'm Nia Brooks again. My company, my contract, my name. You have no claim. You have nothing." The crowd erupted. Someone started clapping, others joined. Not polite applause, but real, genuine celebration of watching a cruel man get exactly what he deserved. Bernard Pierce looked at Darius with pure contempt. "I don't invest in men who treat women like garbage," he said loudly. "Meetings canceled, King. Find another investor." And just like that, everything Darius had done tonight, everything he'd humiliated Nia for, the entire reason he'd torn her dress and destroyed her in front of everyone who mattered to him, it all fell apart. His company was dying. Bernard was his last hope. And now that hope was walking away. Darius dropped to his knees on the marble floor, reached for Nia's hand. "Please," he begged, and there were tears in his eyes now. Real tears. The kind that come when a man realizes he's lost everything. "Please, Nia, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please." Nia looked down at him kneeling there and felt her baby kick one more time. She thought about the nights she'd cried herself to sleep, The days she'd eaten one meal so her baby could survive. The moment he'd offered her money to kill their child. The months of silence and abandonment and cruelty. She thought about all of it. Then she looked at Claudette. Mrs. King, congratulations on your wedding. I hope it's everything you deserve. She looked at Alana. I hope you find someone worthy of you, really. She looked at Bernard. Mr. Pierce, thank you for being a good man. And then she looked at the retired judge who'd picked up her letter. Thank you for seeing me. The judge smiled and pulled a business card from her clutch. Call me Monday, Miss Brooks. You're going to need legal protection from what's coming. I know people. Nia took the card. Patricia Pierce, it read, attorney at law. Then Nia walked toward the exit, her torn dress hanging from her body, her pregnant belly leading the way, her head held so high it could have touched the crystal chandeliers. The crowd parted for her like she was royalty. Some people were crying. Others were still clapping. A young woman reached out and squeezed her hand as she passed. You're amazing, the woman whispered. Nia made it to the hallway before her knees went weak. She leaned against the wall and put both hands on her belly and finally let herself cry. Not from sadness, not from pain, but from relief, from victory, from the overwhelming realization that she'd survived, that her baby would be okay, that everything she'd endured had led to this moment. A hotel manager appeared with a concerned face. Miss, are you all right? Do you need medical attention? Nia wiped her eyes and laughed. Actually, laughed. No, she said. I need to go home. Can you call me a car? 10 minutes later, Nia sat in the back of a taxi, heading toward her tiny apartment that she wouldn't need much longer. Her phone buzzed. A text from Tasha. Girl, what happened? It's all over Twitter. Call me. Nia smiled and texted back. I'll tell you everything tomorrow. But Tasha, we won. We actually won. She placed her hand on her belly and looked out at the city lights streaming past. Somewhere behind her, in that ballroom full of wealth and power, Darius King was probably still on his knees, trying to figure out how the woman he'd called nothing had become everything. But Nia wasn't thinking about him anymore. She was thinking about her daughter, about the schools they'd rebuild together, about the future they'd create, about how sometimes the worst thing that ever happens to you is actually the universe clearing space for something better. Her baby kicked, and Nia whispered into the quiet of the taxi. Your mama's got you, little girl. Your mama's got you, now.